Welcome to the Table Podcast series with Bridget Johnson. Each month, we give you game-changing conversations about K-12 education and leadership. Join us as top educators, field experts, and administrators share actionable strategies to transform your school community. Let's dive in.
Welcome to The Table, the podcast where student-life professionals, educators, and change makers come together to share stories, insights, and ideas for building communities where everyone belongs. I'm your host, Bridget Johnson. Today, I'm excited to welcome Ryan Ermeling to The Table. Ryan is a recognized leader in K-12 education and the founder of Parent Pulse. Since launching the organization in 2022, he's worked with nearly 300 private and independent schools to help them rethink how they collect, understand, and act on parent feedback. His work focuses on helping school leaders move beyond fear and frustration toward more trust-based, productive relationships with families. Today, we're talking about parent feedback, why it feels so complicated for school leaders, where schools tend to get stuck, and how rethinking the feedback loop can actually strengthen community instead of eroding it. Ryan, welcome to the table. It's so nice to have you.
Bridget, great to be with you. I'm excited for the conversation and grateful for the opportunity. So thank you.
Absolutely. How you doing today?
I'm good. We were just talking beforehand, enjoying beautiful weather in Phoenix here. I know most of the country, at least while we're recording here today, is snowed in or iced in, but life is good here in Arizona.
Glad to hear it. So let's start by grounding this in what school leaders are actually experiencing right now. So you work with hundreds of schools. When the topic of parent feedback comes up, what reactions do you most often see from school leaders?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's something that we lovingly refer to as PTFD, post-traumatic feedback disorder. And I
I
think
love that, by the way.
yeah, I mean, every school leader we talk to has some probably level of that. Maybe for some it's more severe than others. But one of the things we see a lot is just apprehension.
hmm
Apprehension because of these past experiences so many school leaders have had as it relates to feedback, right? It's often been rooted in more negative experiences, whether
Right.
it's that squeaky wheel that we all have,
Yes.
or we talk about the parking lot mafia. I've heard all kinds of of other variations on that term. Some I probably shouldn't say on this podcast, right? But there are groups of parents, and it can be students or employees too at a school, right? But
Sure. Absolutely.
sometimes they gather and gossip, and feedback comes out of that. It's just not always super healthy or viewed by school leaders as productive. And so I
Yeah.
think some of that colors how we view feedback, and there's sometimes more of an apprehensive, tentative view to really lean into and embrace feedback.
Absolutely. So, what do you think has shifted about parent expectations in recent years that makes feedback feel more emotionally charged than it used to?
You know, I think in general, right, we have more of a consumer-oriented society. Every year it gets a little bit more that way. There's more
hmm
expectation. There's more of a demand for quality and attentiveness and my needs being met. And I think we're seeing that translate into schools as well. I think that's a big part of it. I think in a lot of the states across our country, as school choice becomes more and more prevalent, that leads to higher competition, right? Parents have in many cases more choice, and so if they're at a school that's not meeting their needs, they know they can take their, in many cases, those state dollars they have and move them over to a different school. And so
Yeah.
as I talk with school leaders, I'm hearing that time and time
Mm.
again, this sense of there's more competition now because of school choice. And that's creating this sense of, hey, here's my feedback. If you don't do something about it, guess what? There's another school down the road that might,
Yeah, we're
or that
moving
will.
on.
Yeah. And so I think those two things, to me, more than anything, are leading to this new era of just heightened expectations and around the feedback.
Gotcha. So you frame feedback as a loop, not a single moment, and that feels like an important reframe. So you describe the feedback loops as measure, engage, act. Where do most schools tend to get stuck, in your opinion?
Yeah, and I would even too, Bridget, we've started to use listen more than measure, right? I think
Ooh,
measure
yeah, that's
gives
good.
this connotation of just putting your foot in the water and taking a temperature and that's about it. I think it's really more of ingesting and processing. And so we talk about listen, engage, act. And I think we see a lot of schools get stuck in that listen mode,
Mm,
right? It's not too difficult. Now, to do it well, I think it can be difficult to have a good systematic and consistent approach to listening. And that's something
uh-huh.
we can dive into as well. But not a lot of schools are both systematic and consistent in how they listen. But even if they are, sometimes we get stopped there. How often do we as schools go back to our people and say, hey, here's what we're hearing. Here are the things we're
Hmm.
thinking about. Here's some things we want to follow up on, right? Or then the action piece, right? Here's some meaningful things that we're going to do. I think some of the reason schools get hung up before they get to action too is because they have this sense that the action we take has to be these massive initiatives
Yeah, and
and
perfect, right?
and perfect, right? And it doesn't have to be just a small silly story, right? We work with the school in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, and
Hmm.
one of the comments they had on a survey from a parent was, "Hey, my 4-year-old is at school all day. They're done with their class at 11, but we can't pick them up till 3, so they've extended care there, and they get or they get lunch at the school every day, but there's never milk with their lunch, right? When the
Hmm.
lunchroom brings down to lunch, there's no milk, and I'd love my 4-year-old to have milk." Well, the person we work with at the school walked down to the lunchroom and said, "Is there any reason we don't have milk for the 4-year-olds?" They said, "No, we didn't know that was important. We'll do it tomorrow." And so they started providing milk. And what's interesting is our point persons at that school, when they said, hey, let's share with our whole community about how feedback is informing action, they shared that story. Now that story impacts a very, very, very minuscule portion of that community, but what it does signal to parents is that, okay, this school is looking for meaningful ways, even if they're not massive initiatives, to take what we're sharing and improve the experience for us. So I think that's something that sometimes feels overwhelming for schools, is finding these big action items. They don't have to be big. Sometimes that low hanging fruit can be very impactful.
Absolutely. And on the flip side of that, what happens when schools collect feedback but don't meaningfully engage with it or have any sort of response?
Yeah, it's that vacuum, right?
Yeah,
That line, if a tree falls in a forest and no one hears it, did it make a
did
sound?
it
I think
actually
the same
fall?
is true with feedback.
Hmm.
Did it go anywhere? Was it even heard? And so I think the feedback loop dries up, right? If
Mm,
if you're not engaging, if you're not showing how it's maybe prescribing action, guess what? Your people are probably going to stop giving you that feedback. If they're not seeing
absolutely.
it heard, if they know you're not listening, if they know you're not trying to do things with it, why are they going to waste that time and effort and even sharing? So we like to try to push schools to more of this culture of transparency and openness and fostering a two-way street. And let me stop there. I don't want that to signify that every piece of feedback is valid and you need to act and do something with it. That's not the case.
Right.
But you still want to create this culture where people feel valued and heard. And I think
Yeah.
that's tough to create if you don't keep going through that feedback loop and take all three of those steps.
I would say, valued her and they're actually comfortable giving that feedback, right? That sort of, psychological safety that, people talk about and feeling like, okay, maybe, they might not agree with me, but I feel like I can.
Right.
Some parents or families don't feel like they even can give feedback. They're not comfortable.
One of the key benefits, you hit it on the head, Bridget, of having a good feedback rhythm is the empathy it provides, right?
Mm,
You don't have to agree with the feedback you receive to still show empathy and value and thank your people for taking the time to share, right? We want them to feel part of the community. And there's research out there that shows that not just for schools but at large, when people provide feedback, sometimes it's just a venting mechanism, a cathartic mechanism,
right.
right? They just want to be heard. And so
Yep.
I think schools can show such empathy through that process without feeling like they have to necessarily act on everything. Just make your people feel valued and heard through the process.
Exactly. And the other thing is not all leaders experience feedback the same way, and that difference really matters. And so you've noticed different patterns in how leaders relate to feedback. What are one or two common ways administrators tend to respond internally when feedback comes in?
Yeah, I think it's not just how they respond, but also how they think about the just even a process of navigating feedback to begin with. We have a
Hmm.
we've created these fictitious personas that I think describe these different types of leaders. A couple of the ones that when we do these assessments or speak to groups, we have people do a real time assessment to say which one am I most like. One that we see quite a bit is what we call sampling Samantha, right? Sampling
Okay.
Samantha is our, these are fictitious names, obviously, right? But
Fair enough.
Sampling Samantha is our school leader that maybe has been at a school for quite a while and has developed
Hmm.
relationships with a couple of parents, right? Either friends of hers or parents that have been at school for a long time and she's got to know. What happens is Samantha now subconsciously has conversations with this small group of people, and in her mind, they represent what the entire community is like,
Ah, got it.
right? So you're,
Sampling Samantha. Yep.
yeah, you're not getting a representative understanding of your community, and that's a dangerous place to be because you start to make assumptions based on a few
Right.
instead of the many. And so, sampling Samantha is something to be on the lookout for. Just to ask yourself, okay, do I find myself having conversations with the people I know most, and then taking what I'm hearing and attaching that or attributing that to the entire community? That can be dangerous, right?
Yeah, very dangerous.
The other one that we see, this is there's four of them. I'll only highlight a couple, but one that I find myself, and because these can apply not just to school leaders, but really any type of leader or person who's working in a community, is Insider Ike. Okay, Insider Ike, and Insider Ike is that person who maybe has a leadership team or a trusted group of confidants. They meet regularly, they plan, they talk, and they act. So I love that there's action out of this group. But what happens, Insider Ike can be very insulated. He's what I
Mm,
would call inside the bottle. He
uh-huh.
can't he's lost some of the perspective of the outside, but yet so many of the decisions he's making are based on the insider feedback, that small group of confidants or that leadership team. And so when you're making decisions that are that insulated and you don't have the full context of your outsiders, that can lead to maybe some poor decision making, right? You're not sure how
Yeah.
well your decisions are impacting the people you serve. So those are a couple of things we see. There are a few other personality types we see as well, but I think it's the takeaway is it's really important to do your own internal uh, an inventory of how you process feedback, how you think about it, where your biases or tendencies might be, so that you have that awareness as you try to design a better and more holistic feedback rhythm.
All right. So if you're a Samantha or an Ike and you're like, oh my gosh, that is me. What do I need to do next? What's one approach that feels, um, or one step that they could take to being more inclusive, or it feels more relational and less reactive?
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, we prescribe kind of different action items for each of these personas, but so let me give you one for each of those two, for instance.
Okay.
Samantha, who's our sampler, if you will, one of the things she needs to do is just start to hear from more people. Okay, and so one of the things, think about parent teacher conferences. Most schools, when they do these, right, they have a link that you can schedule a time to come in, talk to your
Yep.
teacher. It's all systematic, it's organized, it's scheduled, right? What I'd love to see Samantha do is create a standing time in her schedule each week. Maybe it's 2 hours. Have a link. Maybe you develop 40 or four 30-minute segments in those 2 hours, and you put a link in your email signature and your newsletter, wherever, where anybody can sign up for one of those times to come in. Now it's systematic, it's scheduled, you're inviting people that you don't know as well to come in and talk with you. It's much more intentional than what I would call the open door policy. People generally don't take advantage of the open door policy, but if they know they can schedule a time with you and it's restricted for just them and you're going to be dedicated to hearing them for 30 minutes, that will bring some people in that maybe aren't in your group of friendlies, right?
Yeah.
Those people. So that's something that for Samantha could be helpful. Now for Ike, let's think a little bit more outside the box. One of the things Ike has a problem with is hearing only from his leadership team. I love what I call the Jeff Bezos approach. So Jeff Bezos, when he was at Amazon, instituted this policy for leadership meetings, or meetings where really any key decisions were going to be made. He would make sure there was an empty chair at that table, where that meeting was being held. That chair represented the customer. And he would force whoever's leading the meeting to pause at different moments during that meeting and have everybody focus on the chair and say, what is our customer saying about what we're discussing right now? And I think school leaders could benefit, especially those Ikes, from putting a simple symbolic empty chair at their leadership team meeting and pausing periodically to say, that's our parent, that's our student. Remember, what we're talking about impacts them. How are they going to perceive the decision we're thinking about right now? It can really be a helpful mental cue.
Nice. I like that. And so you've mentioned, putting the link in or scheduling, having some schedule set apart time for family to be able to give feedback. But what other ways can schools communicate clearly that feedback is valued even when they can't act on every suggestion?
So I think a lot of it is going through that engage step in the feedback process. And we talk about both micro engagement, which is one-on-one as we're getting feedback from individuals. But then more importantly, I think, or just as important, is what's the macro engagement. So what you asked, Bridget, I think could be alleviated so well by schools very intentionally sharing with their community in a structured way what they're hearing after each feedback cycle, whether it's a survey that they just completed or a town hall or a focus group, whatever they're doing to listen. Let's make sure that we're going back to our group. One of the things we prescribe is what we call a 2-2-2 formula for this. So when you're sharing back with your community, sometimes you don't know where to start with the feedback. And so this can be helpful just to structure it. Share two things you heard that are really affirming or positive. Shows why people love the school, the things that, hey, this is who we are, and you affirm this for us, and we're really glad about this. But then talk about two things that are maybe inconclusive, or you need to investigate a little bit more. Hey, we had some mixed feedback here, right? We had some surprising results here. We didn't expect this, but this is what we heard. So let us dig into this a little bit more. We're going to ask some follow-up questions. We're going to have another focus group. We're going to ask about this in the next survey, right? We want to learn more. And then the final two, hopefully, are action items. A couple of things that we're going to change or maybe already have changed. Again, they don't always need to be big lifts, but some things that we're going to actually take action on based on what we heard. I think if, a lot of our schools that we work with will have a head of school just create a 4 to 5 minute video walking through those 2-2-2s, sharing that with their community, right? And also using that, to your point, as an opportunity to say, hey, we heard some feedback we couldn't act on. It's heard. You're valued. We appreciate that. We can only do so much, and we're really trying to take into consideration, the entire community we serve. So just sometimes even voicing that can help offset those concerns from people who say, oh, well, you didn't do anything with my feedback, right? It gets to the heart of that. So, but that approach just, again, provides a system. I think maybe the theme more than anything else as we talk today is this idea that schools that struggle with feedback usually struggle because there's not a system in place.
Yeah, system's definitely important. So I like the idea of the 2-2-2, and that I feel like works well for the larger community. But closing the loop with one-on-one conversations, what's a way that you can do that in a way that for families feels authentic rather than performative?
Yeah, I think can I hate to sound so formulaic, Bridget, but
No, go ahead.
there's another tool. And listen, this is engineered more for, I think, some of those tough conversations that you have, right? When you get maybe some feedback where people are bringing something that is heavy on their heart or concerned, maybe they're even frustrated or upset. How do you authentically, to use your word, engage with those people and make them feel heard and valued and close that? Again, what we've seen, and this is more listening 101, the formula I'm going to describe. In fact, as we developed this process, I shared it with my wife, and she's like, why don't you do that with me? So that this is something. Yeah. Well, this might be a whole nother podcast, right?
Maybe.
No, we think this formula is really helpful. It's called the 3E approach, and it's simply empathize, explore or explain, and engage. So it's actually 4 E's, but
Okay.
that middle step is 2 and 1.
Okay.
But
Yep.
as you go through these conversations, the first one is empathize. Just helping people feel valued, right? We talked about this already, but thank them for sharing feedback. Echo what you're hearing to make sure that you're capturing what they're sharing in the way that they're intending it to be shared.
Yes.
And seek to understand them. Where's this emotion coming from? Where, is there something else here that would be helpful for me to understand? That's the whole empathy piece, right? But then moving into explore or explain. Now, as humans, as leaders, when we hear some feedback that maybe is tough to stomach or handle, we immediately want to go to explain. Well, I'll tell you why we do this. Or this is, what if we ask a couple of framing questions first? What if we asked what if or I wonder if? Right? Maybe there's something here that we just are stubborn to look at or hadn't thought about, right? So if we can use this middle piece of that engagement to really think about, is there something that we can look at here? Finally, engage. How do we think of this as building a bridge? How do we say, listen, we'd love to continue to have a conversation about this to the extent that we can help, to the extent that we can, make sure you're feeling heard here. Or, this is not the end of it for us. We're not telling you we don't want to continue to converse about this or other items. So just making sure they feel there's a bridge to you there. So I think that process can be really helpful as you're looking to have those authentic one-on-one engagements.
Yeah, what really struck me, what you just said, is the piece about exploring, being curious. And I've talked about that quite a bit because you said, we jump in once people kind of give you their feedback. They want to explain away or explain why they do things they do instead of taking a moment and just asking some additional questions, because you could maybe find out some pieces of information that could be really helpful and inform how you proceed. And so we oftentimes want to just we're moving at 100 miles an hour. We want to move on to the next thing or check this off the list or get this off my plate. And we don't pause and take that time to be a little bit more curious. So I really like that piece that you just talked about.
Yeah, curiosity is so helpful for leaders, right? Just asking good questions. And again, I think it has to be, I'll use your word again, it has to be authentic. It has to be authentic, right? People can tell when you're going through the motions, but if you can really build in this authentic curiosity into your interactions with people, the other thing it does is it disarms them, right? If somebody is hot about some item or upset, right? If you can go into this with empathy and curiosity and willing to have that type of engagement with them, it's such a disarming mechanism as well.
Absolutely, for sure. So before we jump into our last couple of questions, I want to pause here and just talk about Parent Pulse in general. Like, how'd you start Parent Pulse, and tell me kind of how all this works and how schools can work with your organization.
Yeah, we have been around for about 4 years. You mentioned in the the intro, work with about 300 schools, private independent schools. Really, if I had to put our thesis in a nutshell, Bridget, it would be this: parents are customers. They are. We talked about that earlier, right? They have this choice. They don't have to send their kids to your school. Now, I'm not trying to shortchange the role they play in the lives of many of our schools as part of their mission and their community, but they are also a customer and they have expectations. And so what we've tried to do is create a way to have more of a living, breathing feedback mechanism in place. So I think that the two biggest differentiators I will offer as it relates to Parent Pulse versus other survey tools that we've seen on the market for schools. One is we have a drip process. So instead of blasting out a single survey at a single moment in time, which can lead to timing bias and recency bias and a whole host of other concerns, our system automatically and slowly drips out surveys to your people throughout the year. So you always have relevant feedback coming in on a more consistent basis. It's not all at once. You can capture the trajectory of the school year. You can monitor change. You can experiment and see how those changes are being received, right? So it gives you more of a living, breathing feel for what's going on in your community. I think that the other thing that we found really beneficial is, schools have a love-hate relationship with anonymous feedback. Right?
Yes.
They generally, I think in most cases, prefer that the parents can answer anonymously because, you're going to get more honest feedback and probably a higher volume of feedback. but you can't always do anything without anonymous feedback, and that can be really
Right.
frustrating. So Parent Pulse, I think we've cracked that code. We give you the ability to reply even to anonymous survey respondents. So if somebody shares
Nice.
something that is not fully true and you need to set the record straight, or something that's really concerning and you need to follow up on that, you can have a two-way engagement through our platform, all the while they maintain their anonymity. And so they have that safety net, that comfort zone, but you still have the ability to have that conversation, that dialogue with them. So it's become more of an engagement tool, honestly, than just a survey tool. And so those are the
Mhm.
couple of the things that I think would set us apart from other tools out there. Yeah, would be happy to talk with any schools that are listening to see if this might be a helpful solution for their approach to feedback.
Now we're heading into a re-enrollment season, and so I'm wondering if you've had schools use this as, kind of helpful re-enrollment tool or getting feedback during this time for schools. Have you talked to schools specifically about that?
Yeah, we have a number of schools that will use this to help with retention efforts, right? I listen. I'd say there's a more direct, intentional approach to kind of what you're describing, which is, hey, as we head into the re-enrollment window, let's make sure even prior to that, one of the questions in our pulse surveys is, how likely are you to enroll? And if you give us a
Mm.
lower score, let's ask some follow-ups. Let's get some more information and context. So I think that's helpful. But what we've found is this more underlying kind of consistent benefit to re-enrollment, which is if we always have feedback coming in, even when we're not asking specifically about enrollment, and if we can reply to those people and engage with those people, this now becomes a tool where retention is just baked into our everyday, because we
Right.
have the chance now to have conversations with people earlier in the year about issues we weren't even aware of. And so that's just by its very nature going to help impact our enrollment efforts. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So at its core, this isn't just about feedback, it's about relationships, right?
It
And it's
is
so
100%.
important to think about how you're building relationships with all your constituencies, with families, with students, with staff. And so, how does handling feedback well support a sense of belonging for all those groups?
I think, back to what I touched on a little bit earlier, it just changes this culture, right? It makes it less of a us and them, and more of a we, right? I
Yes.
think it empowers the stakeholders in our schools communities, the parents, the teachers, the students, to just have a stake of ownership, a sense that we're in this together. Um, Again, I want to draw that fine line. We're not saying kind of the customer is always right and you have to act on everything you hear. But if you can develop this really consistent and healthy feedback loop where you are listening, engaging, and acting, it's just going to change the culture. We've seen this time and time again, where people now feel that their voice is heard and does matter, and they feel that safety in your community. It's all about, people want to feel safe, right? And safety
Yes.
comes from feeling heard and valued. I think
Hmm.
on a psychological basis. So that's one of the benefits, I think, of that approach.
I love that. And then final question, if schools change just one thing about how they approach parent feedback the rest of this year and for, the years ahead, what would you most want it to be?
Build a system. Whether that system is Parent Pulse, we've got kind of a baked-in system for you, right? But maybe it's something else. Maybe we're gonna jot down. We're gonna do 3 focus groups a year. Here are the dates. Here are the topics. We're gonna do 2 town halls and 1 big. It doesn't matter. But here's the
Hmm.
thing about systems: if you create a system, the reason systems work so well is you don't have to think about it. Then it's
Right.
you've already prescribed how it's going to work, when it's going to work, what we're going to do with it. And so I think that's one of the things we see so often that where schools fail is this is an afterthought. It's something they think of on the
Mm.
fly. It becomes ad hoc. Systematize your approach to feedback. That's going to create such a higher likelihood of execution and really creating benefits from the process.
I love that. Ryan, thank you so much for being here today. This conversation about rethinking parent feedback and building more trust based relationships with families is so needed right now. And I know our listeners are going to take a lot away from it. If you want to learn more about Ryan's work, you can visit Parent Pulse and explore the resources they offer for schools looking to transform their approach to family engagement. We'll include links to Parent Pulse in our show notes. And we have some exciting news to share. The Dean's Roundtable is now on Instagram and TikTok. Follow us for leadership insights, community building resources, and conversations that matter to student life professionals. Just search for the Dean's Roundtable on both platforms and join the conversation. If you're enjoying the table, don't forget to subscribe and share it with a friend or leave us a review. It really helps more people find us. And as always, thanks for pulling up a chair at the table today. I hope this conversation gave you something to think about, or maybe even something to try out in your own community. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time at the table. Have a good one.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Table Podcast Series. Is your student life program delivering on your mission? Our new K-12 student life assessment moves you beyond anecdotes to evidence-based decisions. Through comprehensive stakeholder surveys and expert analysis, you'll get concrete insights across 8 essential dimensions of student life, from culture and wellness to staff effectiveness and resource allocation. We're seeking founding partner schools to be the first to experience this transformative assessment process and help shape the future of student life evaluation. Today's episode was hosted by Bridget Johnson in conversation with Brian Ermeling, produced and edited by Andrick Sigmund, and music by PremiumBeat.com. For any questions, contact information can be found in the episode description. And, as always, thanks again for listening.